Hey y'all. So shortly I'm gonna go into a little video of a somewhat of a reading of the resignation letter of sorts, or a status letter, if you will, of the Inspector General who resigned earlier this year, recently, after a lot of criticism and allegation and innuendo. I don't know what's true or what's not true because everything is so politically motivated, blah, blah, blah. So I am just sharing what in this letter that just came out like 2 days ago, um, from her, what her position is on what they accomplished during the 5 years she's been there. So remember, she came in right before COVID and now is leaving. Um, and I say politically, it's hard to know what's true, unless you're there, right? Attacks tend to be, since she was appointed by a conservative president, the attacks seem to be coming from the liberal side. And there's tons of articles on that. It turns out that a group that likes to oversee the Inspector Generals itself, who might be a partisan group apparently, is now kind of being looked at like, oh, you are partisan. You are this, you are that, you are going after this, that, and the other thing, all in one direction, ignoring the other. So I just want to put that out there. Some people will be like, oh, can't stand that person, that IG, because she was, from the conservative side, um, one way or the other. So that's not really what this is about. This is just about sharing what in the letter describes what was accomplished. And, it's up to each individual to decide if that was good accomplishments under the circumstances and the limitations imposed by budgets at that time, and, domestic and international interferences such as COVID-19 was a big one. But anyway, just wanted to put that out there ahead of time, because, recognize that there is criticisms, and has been, as there always is, right, when it comes to governmental positions. So that is fully recognized, but I am putting out there, based on this letter, and you could take a listen if you want to know what the OIG was involved in during the about 5 years since Inspector General Ennis came on board in 2019, right before COVID. All right, talk to you later. Bye. Hello and happy Independence Day. I'm going to go over something from the Office of Inspector General that may or may not be relevant to some people, but I think it's interesting. And I thought, since it's Independence Day and it's about our country and hopefully being united as best we can and all this other positive stuff, this was in the Office of Inspector General press releases. And as some of you know that watch the Fraud Law Review segment on Fridays, that's where the, I want to say indictments, convictions and sentencings at times are reported by the OIG when it comes to Social Security fraud and other areas of fraud that are connected, where oftentimes the SSA was either instrumental in investigating, even though it could have been, say, a VA fraud or something of that nature. Okay, this is a letter to the U.S. Senate Committee, United States Senate Committee on Finances, and the United States House of Representatives Committee on Ways and Means, and it is submitted by the Inspector General Gail S. Ennis, and I just thought it was of interest, so I'm going to go into what she talks about. Now, she just retired a couple days ago. And she was appointed about 5 years ago by President Trump, and remained in all through, thus far with President Biden. So this was her retirement time. I can't say I blame her. Let's see. Part of this I'm going to read just because I can't say it better. While there is a tendency in our nation's capital to focus on the negative, I believe it is important for both the U.S. Congress and the individuals who have dedicated their tireless efforts to SSA OIG to understand what we have achieved. In the last 5 years, she states, the Office of Inspector General's Office of Audit, that's OA, issued 257 audits that identified over $8.2 billion in question costs and over $7.3 billion in funds put to better use. I think that's important. In the same time frame, they have the Office of Investigations, OI, contributed to over $1.4 billion in monetary accomplishments, which includes court-ordered restitution, recoveries, settlements, judgments, fines, civil and administrative actions, and estimated savings resulting from investigations. She notes that when she was sworn in as the IG, one of her key goals was to make an impact that would help the most vulnerable individuals in our country. I intended to utilize my private sector experience to help modernize SSA OIG to be more agile and to think innovatively and to ensure SSA works to provide the most efficient and effective service for the American public. Okay, obviously she thinks she achieved those goals. I'm not saying she didn't. I actually don't have anything to compare them to. I've only been reporting on these things a couple years now, so I came in the middle of that tenure. I don't know what precipitated before that. So maybe there'll be some reports on that. She says that the OIG moved away from a status quo approach of each auditor completing one audit per year that focused on fixing errors rather than identifying the root cause of the issues. She said that the OIG needed to produce larger and more complex audits to address the root cause of the issues that were being faced. She recognized, or they recognized, that a team approach would reduce the number of audits per year, but they were confident it would increase the quality and impact of the work. According to this letter, this approach was effective. For several fiscal years, while we adapted to this new approach, our auditors produced fewer but more meaningful audits with the primary focus to improve SSA's programs and operations. Now, I don't know what that means in particular. Fewer audits. Perhaps that's because audits were focused on where there was actual evidence of something going on versus maybe random audits as much. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. When we have like IRS audits, so they're just going to go out and start nailing people who are not necessarily doing anything wrong, but to get nailed perhaps would be highly stressful. And all you have to do is say, listen, pay us $2,000 because we think this, and people just roll over and pay it because they have no choice. That can they spend $40,000 on an attorney? Not usually. So I just wonder if that's part of this, like instead of going after auditing things of which there is no smoke, just think there's a fire. Maybe they were focusing on the actual smoke that existed, which, could be a good thing. Okay, now this is something that people hear a lot and they cringe. CDI, Cooperative Disability Investigations Program, is one of SSA's, this is from the letter, guys, SSA and SSA OIG's most successful anti-fraud initiatives, focusing on reviewing and identifying disability fraud before benefits are paid. In 2021, they established a hub model that allowed for a single CDI unit to provide CDI coverage to more than one state. Oh, what are we doing? We are condensing, I guess, right? They say, or this letter says, that the approach permitted them to meet the congressional mandate from the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015. That was an Obama era law change. I think I've mentioned that a few times in other videos, where that particular law under the Obama administration and Congress at that time, I think that's the one that cut out the spousal benefit, claiming a spousal benefit off of a husband or wife in retirement and letting your own grow until 70 for a bigger benefit on your own. It had been a spousal strategy for improving retirement outcomes financially for years and years. And then that put the kibosh on it. And I remember at the time, I used to do a lot of reporting on this elsewhere for a different company, but I remember thinking, wow, they didn't give people a lot of notice. I would think that you would make that law effective for people maybe more than 10 years away from retirement, maybe 52 and under, not the people 57 that have, 5 years to age 62. They already had a plan based on the laws. And I know laws can always change. We know that. But this was a real stick it to you, as I saw it, because people who are approaching 62, and I don't mean 6 months away, you can't regroup in 6 months. You need like a decade, right? They were really screwed, because they planned according to what, Congress had officiated prior to that. And then Congress, under the Obama administration, yanked that out without, I don't really have a problem that they removed it. That's, you got to do things like that. It was the timing and the failure to give people that were closely approaching retirement age the real idea of closely approaching. I mean, I'm closely approaching. I'm going to be 57 this year. I'm closely approaching. They didn't give them a reprieve. It applied to everybody. Okay. Okay, so she's saying that particular law, they were allowed to meet the mandates in that law when she came in 2019 to provide coverage in all 50 states and the U.S. territories while also achieving cost savings. And she notes that over 8.1 billion has been saved since the inception of that CDI program. So that sounds all very good. I mean, the CDI program is meant to weed out the bad actors, not you, not disabled people who just might have improved and don't realize it. It doesn't go after people who medically improve and there's no way to know because it might be they medically improve because they just haven't been following up with themselves either. That's not what a CDI is about, per se. It's about bad actors, okay? Because fraud, remember, requires intent, not unawareness, intent by the actor. Okay, she notes that since she was sworn in as Inspector General, the OIG has identified and is responding to new and evolving challenges and threats, including pervasive government imposter scams. Goodness knows we see these all the time. We were just reporting on the one for June of 2024, where it was all over the internet that you're all going to get an extra $600 in June just for the sake of it. Obviously, it was false, and even the SSA had to put something on their outgoing messages when you called their office. They put it up on the screen when we would go in. I think even when like anybody would go in to try to get to their SSA.gov site, their account, but also the attorney site was also had the big header. Talking about cybersecurity and AI, artificial intelligence issues. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm not a very creative person when it comes to problem solving things like that. I can do it pretty well in the Social Security arena of disabled people improving their cases, and that's where my psyche ends. These cybersecurity dangers and getting past them. It's like you have to be more brilliant than the worst bad actor. It's amazing. So I give them kudos, up and down on this one. Issues from the coronavirus pandemic, blah, blah. She talks about how the OIG adapted successfully to the challenges by committing significant resources, building a more agile organization. I think that's really important. Instead of being a big, slow elephant, and I love elephants, but not when it comes to our government, and embracing a culture of internal and external communications and collaboration. Huge, huge, huge. I will say that a lot of the reportings that we do on the Friday Fraud Law Review do always have other, there's this issue of fragmentation where one law enforcement agency has no idea about suspects or even convicted people under a different agency. It could be different states' police departments. I'm not sure if it's state police departments within a state, but it also has been historically true in the federal realm either, whether it's due to refusal, egos, what have you. It can't be due to technology today. There's always an ability to share because technology is that good, but it seems like there's a choice not to at times, right? So this is why you might have, somebody who did a really bad act in New Jersey go to California and do the same bad act because nobody's sharing the information. I know fragmentation has probably been reduced. I remember when my husband was studying up on it years ago, it was very interesting and disturbing to see how pervasive it was, but I have a feeling in a decade, it's probably improved a lot since then. So I think that's what they're talking about when they talk about collaboration within the organization and probably with other organizations. She notes that early in her tenure, they did see the rise of the government imposter scams and recognized the need to act swiftly and comprehensively to respond. They developed a multidisciplinary approach to combating and preventing imposter scams that included education and outreach. We do see that a lot. They put up blog pieces and everything else. The National Slam the Scam Day is something that they talk about. That was apparently a brainchild of her SSA OIG. And it's been held for the last 5 years. It said it represents the government at its best collaboration across the government and private sector to protect the members of the public from scammers seeking to steal their money and personal information. The scams can happen to everybody, anybody, but I see it mostly when it happens to elderly who may not be as tech savvy because they didn't grow up with the tech that many of us now kind of are used to. And also sometimes because there's cognitive decline and easy gullibility. But that's not just relegated to the elderly. That can also be to any of us in a bad moment, I think, and certainly to those who are disabled or otherwise vulnerable, particularly if they're mentally impaired. Apparently, they established a new division also called the Major Case Unit to investigate these and other complex fraud schemes. So that's good. It is, as the OIG has become a leader in understanding artificial intelligence and responding to the potential threat it represents to the public. They created an AI task force and are collaborating with SSA on AI initiatives. The OI has played a critical role in investigations relating to the misuse of federal COVID-19 pandemic relief funds. I hope they continue to look into people who did that. Just because a few years have passed over that debacle, I hope that they don't let up on catching those that did it and think they got away with it, because there's plenty of them out there. We know that. They only hit the tip of the iceberg with any of indictments so far, I think. Using stolen identities and social security numbers was critical to pandemic relief-related fraud. Yeah, sure. The OIG participated in over 24 pandemic fraud-related work groups and collaborated with federal, state, and local law enforcement entities on joint investigations. And that is what I'm talking about when it comes to eliminating fragmentation or defeating it, I guess, and not letting it be such a destructive reality when it comes to investigating. A little bit more of that. Yeah, a little bit more on that COVID-19 fraud. Boy, was it huge. I mean, honestly, If you're not aware how huge it is, guys, it was so big. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more fraud, if more money went to fraud than to the actual places it was ostensibly intended. I say ostensibly because I think some of it was intended to pad a few pockets, not necessarily the outright fraudsters, but other people with the backhand method, right? Or groups. Yeah, for sure. She also refers to having built a stronger IT component, information technology, within the SSA OIG to better adapt and respond to changing needs of the organization. Obviously, you got to keep your IT up. SSA has been notorious for being very behind the ball on IT and technology. I know Commissioner O'Malley, who has recently come on board, is very intent on technology and using it in the best way for this antiquated, outdated SSA use of it, and really improving on that. So hopefully we'll see that come into play. I have hopes. I do. I'm excited about it. She continues on to say that employees are the most valuable asset, and they have, and under her tenure, they focused on improving engagement and building professional development programs for the employees, I guess, within their organization. All right, we're almost done, guys, I promise. They established, under her tenure, the SSA OIG's first ever full-time organizational health director position to serve as a liaison between the workforce and the leadership. We also established new programs to improve opportunities for professional development for all employees. That's always nice, because when people want to have mobility, upward mobility, or even lateral, getting additional professional development, AKA education in that area or skills, is such a welcome thing. And it really, I think, shows that you care about your employees and keeping them, retaining them, instead of having such a high turnover that we have seen in so many areas of the SSA. In the DDS, as you all know, one of the reasons for the backlog is short staffing, because I guess nobody really wanted to stay with those jobs. Either they underpaid or they hired people with poor work ethic to begin with. I don't know, maybe a combination of the two. I'm not going to go into the details of how they describe the professional development program that they started. It says, facing numerous challenges and monumental change, the SSA OIG employees were highly successful despite receiving only one increase in base funding in fiscal year 2022, after receiving no increase since fiscal year 2016. SSA OIG also received no additional budget to fund its investigations related to pandemic relief programs or government imposter scams. At the same time, SSA received significant increases in its budget. So I guess they're talking about other areas of SSA did receive big budget increases, but not the OIG, for all of these things it had to address, including what must have been huge, the pandemic fraud. And probably Social Security identity theft. In fiscal year 2024, SSA's OIG budget represents 0.8%, so that's less than 1% in comparison to SSA's budget. Even with these fiscal challenges, SSA OIG maintains $21 in returns to the American people for every $1 in appropriations. Okay. SSA OIG maintains $21 in returns to the American people for every $1 that it is given in appropriations, I guess, in the budget. I'm not going to be able to dissect that. So we'll leave it at that, but it sounds favorable to at least the efficacy. Sounds. While there are many more issues she would have liked to address during her tenure as Inspector General, She recognizes that the OIG is on a stronger path because of what they were able to achieve. I am proud of the SSA OIG team, she says, and as she retires, she believes she is leaving the organization in a much stronger position to change, innovate, and lead on the important work it performs to serve the American people. Yeah, you know, that Inspector General came on in 2019. So very shortly after, we had the COVID-19 pandemic and the debacle that stemmed from that. I can't imagine how crazy tough that must have been. So I am going to, at the moment, presume there was some pretty masterful things going on in a positive way, despite what would be the headwind that created, the pandemic and the handling of it over the last few years, I would say would be a strong headwind against getting ahead and making things happen. But it looks like they did. Again, I don't really have anything to compare it to, but I just wanted to put it out there. So she's retiring, and I wish her a wonderful retirement. Certainly deserves. I'll talk to you later. Bye.